artifact, and I'm really interested in terms of what's in these museums. When I think about reparations, I think about not just monetary compensation or university scholarships or free health care for all African people, but I also think about getting our stuff back. And in order to get our stuff back, you got to know where our stuff is. And so this was an opportunity, I thought, to come to Boston, an area that I really like, probably because I don't come up here that often, and go to these museums, see some things I haven't seen before, and then fly back to the West Coast from here. But I find myself with extra time on my hands, and so here I am. And Brother Jamal was kind enough to say, Runoko, I'll do my best to hook something up, and as a result of that, here we are tonight. So the museum thing is just kind of and I do have a lot to share tonight. I don't know if Jamal, the program has officially started or what, but I have a lot to share. Now, what kind of time do we have? We're officially live. I have a lot of pictures to show you guys. In fact, to be honest with you, what I'm going to do, if you're interested in your game, is I'm going to do 3 presentations tonight. I'm going to try to show you about 400, 450 photographs under the auspices of the title Journeys to the African World. I'm going to do a presentation on the global African presence, but I'm going to show you the global African presence through images of children all over the world. And most of the pictures that you're going to see tonight are completely original photographs, not from books, not from YouTube, not that I've downloaded from the internet, but pictures that I've taken myself. I've been very fortunate in the last 16, 17 years to have traveled to 110 countries. And my goal initially was to do 65, and I did that fairly quickly, and I got to 70 and 75 and 80 and 85, and I said, hey, I might as well do 100. And when I got close to 100, which wasn't easy, I said, well, why stop now? And so I passed, I did 110, I think, visiting Cameroon. No. The last 2 countries that I visited that I hadn't been to before were Oman and Qatar in the Persian Gulf. Okay. And now I think that 120 is easily within my grasp. But I also feel my age catching up with me, and the desire to travel is not as intense as it once was. And so I think that I'll concentrate maybe the next phase of my life, because I'm told that you need to reinvent yourself from time to time, in terms of just organizing these photographs, because that will turn out to be one of my biggest legacies. If you had asked me 10 years ago, Runoko Rashidi, what will your biggest contribution be, what will your legacy be, I would have said probably having introduced the African community to other parts of the African world of which we know very little. Black people in Australia, for example, there was a branch of the Garvey movement in Australia. There was a Black Power movement. There were freedom rides and sit-ins there. In 1908, I think Jack Johnson, the great heavyweight champion, went to Australia, and it was against the law for Black people to go to the boxing match. And some of them snuck in anyway, and they saw Jack Johnson beat the snot out of this white boy, and ended up saying it was the greatest thing they ever experienced for a Black person to be able to see that he could challenge the world, if you understand what I mean, could beat white people up. That was a big deal, and Jack Johnson actually hung out with Aboriginal Australians. Or Black people in India. India has the largest concentration of Black people in any one country in the world. That shocks a lot of people. But there are twice as many Black people in India as there are in Nigeria, Tasmania, millions and millions of Black people in the South Pacific that say they come from Africa and say it with great pride. I would have said that was my big contribution, writing about these places, showing pictures from these places, etc. But now, I would say I've added to that, and maybe surpassed that in the sense that I think one of my legacies, and when you turn 60, I hit the big 60 last summer, I guess you start thinking about, how you will be remembered and what you'll do for the rest of your life, etc. At least I'm spending time with that. And I think another thing will be that I was one of the most accessible African scholars that we've ever had. You know, I spend a lot of time on Facebook. I jokingly say I'm the pharaoh of Facebook. Everybody needs to be the pharaoh of something. So I'm the pharaoh of Facebook in my mind, the legend in my own mind. And, but also the photographs. You know, I have pictures. If you think the stuff I post on Facebook are good, you ain't seen nothing. Because, you know, when you post your stuff out there in social media, that's it. And everybody don't mean us any good. So you have to be a little bit careful and exercise discretion and caution before just putting all the stuff that you work so hard for just out there. And so a lot of the pictures I have are really original. I think now I've probably collected 50, 60, maybe 70,000 photographs. So I'm going to show you a few of those tonight. Okay? So let me just, Jamal, you ready to get started?
Yes, sir.
I guess we already started. I wish that what I could do is if we had a cable long enough, I'd just put my computer up here and operate it from here. But the cable is not long enough, so I'm going to have to sit there. So at least I had an opportunity to sit here where everybody can see me. Don't forget the book. The new book is Uncovering the African Past, the Ivan Van Sertima papers, and the other one, which is available, is African Star Over Asia, the Black Presence in the East, a series of DVDs. The Asia book is $40. The Uncovering the African Past book is $30. And then I have another small travel book, which is only $10. So hopefully, and the DVDs are $20, and there's about 8 or 9 DVDs. So hopefully there's something for everybody's budget. You can pay cash or a check or a PayPal account. You can do one of those things. I'm still in the 19th century in terms of technology, so I'm not able to process a credit card. And when I say still in the 19th century in terms of technology, I still don't even know how to send a text message on my cell phone. And that should tell you something right there. Jamal has been texting me for the last 2 days. And he noticed, I bet, and Runoko never responds to my text because I don't know how to respond to a text. On a cell phone that I've had more than 2 years now. Okay. I don't know why I said all that. I was going to make a point. Maybe that's a senior moment or something like that. So you ready to roll, man? Want to get started?
Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Runoko Rashidi. I'm a historian. I'm an anthropologist. I spend about a third of my time in Los Angeles and a little more than a third of my time in Paris. My daughter lives there, and I travel all the time. I haven't unpacked a suitcase since 1997, and that should tell you something about my social life right there and why I've been divorced twice and looking again. Okay? I'm happy to be here. I think this is my third or fourth visit here. And I believe that on every visit except the very first one, Brother Jamal has played an instrumental role in that. So tonight's presentation is Journeys Through the African World. I want to welcome everyone, and again, it's going to be a visual presentation, so please adjust your chairs in a manner that you can see. I'm going to have to sit right there, and we'll see if we can turn on some of these lights. Yeah, let's dim the lights as much as possible.
No, it's just on and off.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Y'all don't mind being in the dark, do you? Most of us are in the dark all our lives and don't even know it. We might need to move this podium here. Is this blocking you all, or can you see over the podium? So I'm going to sit there. So Jamal, maybe you could just move the microphone.
Yes, sir.
And I'll just operate this. All right. This is a black institution, an African institution.
Yes, sir.
It's nice to be in a black place.
Sir.
Come on in. All right. So let's do it right. You can just no. Leave it right there. I'm just going to turn the computer around and tell you something. Is anybody older than I am? Anybody older than 60? It's dark, so don't be afraid to raise your hand. I have your permission to begin the visual presentation. Let's do it. And thank you for your donations, by the way. I think the point I was going to make is that everything is going to all the donations that I received tonight and the book sales will go to the research. Now, 3 presentations. I wonder which one I should do first. All right, let's do this one. Let me just show you some images of some of my recent travels. I don't know what that means. All right, let me just shut this part down and start again. All right. That just means the ancestors are saying, brother, this is what we want you to do. Can everybody see? Sister, can you see? I'm right in front of you. It wouldn't be bad if you guys moved around. Right? Africans have been forced to be flexible. First section will be images. It will be the global African presence using images of children. And this is basically the presentation that I gave in DC a couple days ago at the Power Talk 2 program. This, of course, is Sister Hadia Pendleton. This is a sister who achieved a degree of fame at the second inauguration of President Obama, and she went back to Chicago after the inauguration and caught a bullet, just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't know how it is in Boston, but everywhere else, black folks shooting each other down in the United States. And we call white people the devil, and certainly the devil killed those sisters and brothers in Charleston last week. But black people do that to each other every day. And I think that if we can be outraged at what white people do to us, we should be equally outraged at what we do to ourselves. Okay? So this sister is just in the wrong place at the wrong time and caught a bullet. This is her mother. There's one sister in Chicago who lost 5 of her children to gang violence, or gun violence. Now losing 1 is bad enough, but to lose 5? I mean, what do you say about something like that? So my point is this: if we understood who we were, we would not be doing the things that we do to each other. We wouldn't be calling each other bitches and hoes and niggas and justifying it. And MFs. I find that what we do a lot of times is justify our degradation. We make excuses for the behavior that we indulge in. Now people say, Runoko, we love the work you do. We love what you do. And what should we do? Which is a question that really puzzles me a lot. When people say, Runoko, what should we do? And I always tell people the basic things, and then that love begins to become very, very lukewarm. I say, for example, brother, get you a black woman. And then this brother who's been racially profiled, the last one to get the job will say, I don't see color. And you can't help who you fall in love with, which is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. You were just walking down the street and Cupid shot you with an arrow, and that's why you went for that blonde. I find that people who say they don't see color usually have a mate that don't look like them. Or I tell a Christian who said, Runoko, we love you, take that image of white Jesus off your wall. And that Christian who loved me will say, but I don't see color, and it doesn't really matter. Or if I tell the sister, why do you have a standard of beauty that don't reflect you? Instead of spending that money on that Mongolian weave, get a math and science tutor for your child. And that sister's angry at me from that point. Or if I tell a person, stop saying that we need another great leader and lead. That person doesn't like me so much anymore. I don't think African liberation is rocket science. I think it's a matter of application and execution. And I think as a people, we lack the will, we lack the organization, we lack the vision, and we lack the courage to do what must be done. We would rather go on the internet and call white people bad names and talk about this fake white woman and talk about who won the game and how many points they scored. I tell people, spend your money with other black people, and they say, well, it really doesn't matter, I just want the best service I can get. Just stay a slave. If you want to change your behavior, then don't complain about the way we're treated. Frederick Douglass said, power conceives nothing without demand. It never did, it never would. We have to change ourselves if we want to change the world in which we live. Now, my philosophy of history is simple. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. So if you are told and you are convinced that you are a nigga, or excuse my language, you are a bitch, you will act that out. But if you are programmed to think that you come from divinity and kings and queens are in your family tree, you will act that out. So part of our problem is to change our thinking. And if we can change our thinking in the way we see ourselves, we can change the world in which we live. We are not a stupid people. We are the first people on the planet. The people who introduced the concept of time. But a lot of us don't know these things. People say, but the white man didn't tell us that. Whose job is it for us to know our history? The white man's or us? So my point is, we can do what we will. Marcus Garvey said, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. It's up to us. I hope that's the last preaching I'm going to do for tonight. Get it out of my system. Now, let's just go around the world. Let's go A through Z and look at African people as I've seen them. For example, this is my first trip to Australia. This is 1998, and this is a little boy in Australia I photographed in 2008. Now, sisters and brothers here, until January 1967, were not considered human by the government. And that's astounding. Until January 1967, black people in Australia, so-called aboriginals, were officially classified as plants and animals, as flora and fauna. They were not recognized as humans. This image takes us to Barbados. A little Rastafarian child was in a park and jumped in my arms, and this is that child. Good thing I wasn't an axe murderer or something like that. The innocence of youth. Benin, in West Africa, one of the few countries in the world where black people practice a traditional African religion. You know, because everywhere else is Christianity, it's Islam, it's Buddhism, it's Hinduism. Now, I don't really deal with religion. I'm with the Malcolm X school of thought. When we come together, we put our religion in the closet. But it's refreshing that there's at least one country in the world where African people practice traditional African religions, where everybody's name is not Joe and Bob and Bill and Mary and Sally. And if there's a Joe or Bob or Bill or Mary and Sally, it ain't personal in the room. Bermuda, a very, very, very wealthy place in the North Atlantic. In Bolivia, a lot of people are not even aware that black people live in Bolivia. Not even everybody in Bolivia is aware that black people are there. And I was down there on just doing research, and I put word out that I'd like to do some lectures if anybody wanted to host me. And one organization in particular was very, very aggressive. And they said, we'll not only host you, but we'll drive you into the Andes Mountains, actually a range underneath the Andes called the Yungas, and we'll have a translator for you and a car for you. And all of this sounded almost too good to be true. And we'll put you up and all of those things. And as it turned out, it was the USAID, which I guess is another branch of the CIA. And what had happened was, these black people in the Andes Mountains in Bolivia had said the U.S. government was trying to get them to stop growing coca leaves, or coca, which they turn into cocaine. And they said this is the only means of livelihood. And the U.S. government is saying, well, it's messing us up. And they said, well, we'll consider stopping the growth of coca if you get an African or African-American historian to come down here and tell us something about our history. And as it turned out, I just happened to be passing through Bolivia at that time. And so, strange bedfellows to say the least. Now, whether they stopped growing coke or not, I don't know. I rather doubt it, but it achieved my purpose. And these were among the children that I was with. Some of the most mischievous children I've ever been around. You can look on their faces and see that they were a fun-filled bunch. They made fun of my bald head. They made fun of my attempt to speak Spanish. They made fun of my bow legs. And this little boy in particular, I really was tempted to throw him over that mountain range. But his father was right there looking at me like, I'm reading your mind. Don't do it. Resist the temptation. And I brought with me these images of a black Christ that I photographed in Egypt. And I looked at this picture for a long time and couldn't figure it out because I'm thinking, this child has about 4 different arms. Here's an arm here and there's an arm there. And it wasn't until I looked and saw this kid's face and said, oh, there are 2 children down there. Yeah, so it's a funny kind of photo. Bolivia. Now, black people in Bolivia only make up about 2% of the total population. And they were brought there from Africa to work in the silver mines. And they died like flies from the cold and the high altitudes. And so eventually they were relocated. But I'm told that even now, you can hear those black people working in those silver mines. You can see their footprints. You can hear the picks and shovels of their ghosts. That's what I was told. Botswana in southern Africa. Botswana is a relatively prosperous African country. About 60% of the people there are literate. Now these are nice pictures. These take us to a place called Bougainville. And Bougainville is a province of Papua New Guinea. And this is deep, deep, deep in the South Pacific. And the people there are called, you can see this kid making a face for the camera. I'm sorry, you're not supposed to say kid anymore. Child is making a face for the camera, mugging for the camera. And the reason I wanted to go there is because I was told that the blackest human beings in the world live there. And actually, that's where I wanted to be. And I had a lot of fun there too. Look at the color of the hair and the texture of the hair. And this little boy just looked mean all day. I wanted to walk up to this child and say, like, do you need a hug or something? But I was afraid. And again, look at the texture of the hair. This is all natural now. And this little girl right here, to me, just looks absolutely adorable. The innocence of youth. Now these are the same group of people, but they live in a place called Buka. And Buka literally means, B-U-K, means black skin. Is it me or is it just warm in here? You should saw me a power talk. I was warm. I asked this young brother if I could take his picture, and he stood up and I saw this 50-cent t-shirt, who I call No Sense. And this brother is from the middle class, but he's making the money claiming to be a thug.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I know it. He was trying to get over. Buka, deep in the South, Cambodia. This is Southeast Asia. Now, I have a bunch of group tours that I do. I have one in about 3 weeks to Mexico. We're going to see those Olmec heads that you see the replica of on the table. And then in November to Brazil. And then after that, in January, it'll be to Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. And then next summer, next June, July, we're going to do a tour called Pharaohs and Caesars, an African heritage tour to Italy, Egypt, and an extension to Sudan. So anyway, these are Khmers in Cambodia, Cameroon, in West Central Africa. Visited a school. And always when we go to these places, we bring a bunch of school supplies. This is more like Central Africa. Look at these children. Look at the face. Look at this little boy. And this country has close connections historically with Egypt, with Kemet. You can see a lot of traditions from the ancient Nile Valley here. Are from Cameroon. I showed that one twice. From Toronto. Actually, I'm sure this sister probably has Caribbean roots. Thank you, my brother, for everything.
Yes,
Let's give Brother Jamal a big round of applause.
Yeah.
The next time he runs for city council or supervisor or senator or governor or president, vote for him. In fact, work in his campaign. These are the kind of young people that we need. Respectful. He's an activist in the community. He believes that we can transform our community. And he's a living example. And I have the greatest degree of respect for this brother. So I'm at an African-centered school in Toronto, which has now been transformed into a multicultural school, too black. And I'm doing a presentation in a place that's packed, standing room only. And this little girl and her mother comes up and they very shyly ask me for an autograph. And I think the reason for that is sometimes when you're very dark complexion, you tend to be a little self-conscious and shy. That's how I was when I was coming up. My father used to say, used to tell my sisters, don't marry no black nigger, because if you do, you'll have a black baby. As if that's the worst thing that you could possibly, this is my own father. And a lot of us still have that mentality. You know, in 1954, the year I was born, you had the black doll test, where black children were given a choice: you want a white doll or you want a black doll. And most of the black children said, give me the white doll. Why? Because it's pretty. The black doll is ugly. This is 1954 though. But about 3-4 years ago, that experiment was repeated. And the results were identical, if not worse. And we're doing something wrong. You know the old expression, if you're white, you're right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're red, go ahead. If you're brown, stick around. And if you're black, get back. I know y'all never heard anything like that in Boston. That's a good concept. You heard about that? Massachusetts, I don't believe it. This is in Canada. This is just me in front of an image called Breaking Moses' Crown, which I never understood. And you see the children there. Maybe he's giving this little girl poison or something. Colombia now. Now I lectured in Colombia in November. I always wanted to go there. Colombia in South America has about a 30-35% African population. And they don't have any power at all. I mean, to me, the black people who are the worst off in the world are the Dalits of India. And then the untouchables. And then number 2, the Aboriginal Australians. But number 3, black people in the Andes countries, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, they're treated like two-footed beasts. But they're hungry for information. Now these sisters and brothers, all they basically know is that they were slaves. So when you start talking about ancient Egypt, and showing pictures of Imhotep, and images of black Christ and stuff, you could just see their eyes light up, and their self-esteem really rises. Anyway, at a university in Columbia, it went over so well that at one of these universities, black people, they're translating one of my books into Spanish. And it should be out sometimes in August. I have my works in French already and a little bit in Dutch. But it's flattering to have my work in different languages. And they offered me a professorship at one of the universities. I think I'm going to take it. Colombia. Now these folk are from East New Britain. Again, deep in the South Pacific. And here you have natural blondes. I'll show you some more of those. Sometimes the hair turns darker as you get older, but a lot of times it just stays blonde. I don't know if it's the sunlight or the water, or it's genetic or what. And I did a presentation for these children at a place called St. Augustine School. And they don't know anything about African Americans. They never heard of Oprah. They don't know Barack Obama. They don't know anything about them. But you know they knew one African American. And that, interesting enough, was Ben Carson, who I would have said right on at that time. Now I would call him an idiot. A brilliant surgeon. What's wrong with that, brother? Ecuador, again, another Andes country. Deep in Ecuador. This little girl, I did a presentation, supposedly for children, but it was more adults than children there. And this little, we had a question and answer period, and this little girl stood up, she's about 14, and says, look, I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you, because until today I was never proud to be a black person. So again, it shows the power of knowledge of self. Now it's transformative. Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about that for a long time. We talk about Malcolm, and justifiably so, but Malcolm had a great teacher. Ecuador. This is on the cover of the book, Uncovering the African Past. Here's the original, one of the original versions of the Madonna and Child. This is the prototype of Jesus and Mary, the infant Jesus and the Virgin Mary. You can see Aset and Heru, or Isis and Horus here, Kemet. Eritrea, in the Horn of Africa. And these adorable little girls in the Horn of Africa, Eritrea. I'm going through the alphabet now. We're in Ethiopia. And I was just in Ethiopia in May. It was my second trip to Ethiopia. I took a group there. But this time, we actually went to southern Ethiopia, which is like a different country. Most of the time we see Ethiopians, we see the Amhara in the north. But the Amhara are a minority in Ethiopia. The majority group in Ethiopia is the Oromo. But in the South, you have a group called the Kanso, the Ari, Afi, Hamar, Mercy, Suma, Surma, etc. So these are some of these very traditional people. And I love this photograph right there. These young girls, just very beautiful to me. These are all the, I guess, traditional people. I don't like to use the word tribe anymore. Traditional people of southern Ethiopia. I like this little boy right here. And they liked me. And I think they had a lot of fun. Look at this child right here, looking at me like, what on earth is that sitting down there? I never saw anybody like that before. Most of them have not met African Americans. And another thing that surprised them is my facial hair. They're not used to that, and they have white facial hair, prematurely white I might add. White facial hair was shocking to them. And people would stare at me and follow me around, and the children would follow me around, and then I would turn around and chase them, and it was the funniest thing you could imagine. Now, these are the people called the Mercy, and they were very aggressive, and you have to give them money to take their photographs. And they have a special rate that's not negotiable. It's 5 Ethiopian birr, that's like 25 cents. Now look at these traditional people. Now this takes us to Fiji, and here's another example. Now I'm leading a group to Fiji, and somebody on the tour bus says, Runoko, Dr. Rashidi, I gotta go to the toilet. Well, when you gotta go, you gotta go. I had about 20 people, so we started looking for a place to stop the bus. Finally found a place. Some people went to the bathroom, other people went out to smoke a cigarette, some people wanted to stretch their legs. I went to find a beer, because these black people are driving me crazy. Being a tour leader, wow. I drink when I'm on these tours. Normally I'm sober as, as something. You could fill in the blank. And everybody, these black people started coming out of their homes, and they saw us, people with locks, and African clothes and stuff, and they said, where are you from? And we said, we from Africa. And they said, we from Africa too. So it was like a party. And all at once, this little blonde child comes out. Everybody stop what they're doing and gathers around this kid. Put the beer can down, cigarettes out, come out the toilet, and it was a big thing. You so cute. What's your name? Here's $1. Here's some candy. Can I take your picture? All at once, the bus driver said, look, I don't care where you're from. We got travel to do. Get on the bus. So we get on the bus. And at that point, the youngest person in the tour group comes up and says, Dr. Runoko, what kind of message do we just send those people? And I was stopped in my tracks. Now, I was drawn to that child because he just looked so different as an anthropologist. But is that really it? Are we so programmed with this idea that if you're white, you're right, and if you're blonde, you're more attractive, that we just respond instinctively without even really thinking about it? Mesmerized. Travel, I think, is tremendous education, and you know what we learn about the most is ourselves. It's as though we're looking at a mirror, and we see a reflection, and that reflection is not always attractive. All right, Fiji. And in France, and this little child is mine, okay? So she's an example of black people in France. Her mother has Senegalese roots, and very proud of our daughter. And you can see this is a cold December night, and here's my kid in front of the Eiffel Tower with a "We Are Mike Brown" sign. I was very proud of my daughter. She's 9 years old. She thinks she's about 45. Gambia, where Kunta Kinte traces roots. What's Kunta Kinte's slave name again? They beat him and said he was, I should say, this is where Alex Haley, who was the author of Roots, traced his lineage. This is a community called Jufre, and we went there. This is our trip, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's where this photograph was taken, the trip from hell. And this is my more recent trip to the Gambia. Pretty little girl. Ghana. me teaching school in Ghana. Never once did I have to say, sit up, be quiet, pay attention. I'm talking, none of those things. And I didn't have to pass the metal detector. These children think that school is an opportunity to advance yourself. Here, when the child goes to school, they're basically trying to survive, from what I can gather. Trying not to get beat up. It's a fashion show. The shoes you wear, the hairstyles. Here, they make the girls keep their hair cut short. All the time they're in public school. Because they don't want that to be an issue. It's not about the sneakers you have. It's not about the weave you have. It's about getting something in your head. Here, in the public schools, we are full of distractions. And if you learn anything, good for you. All right. And to me, this little girl right here is exceptionally pretty. Ghana. Back in Ghana. Guyana in South America. Haiti. Now that's a country that suffered. You know, the Haitians were forced to pay reparations to the French for the loss of their property. And you know what the loss of their property was? Them. Haiti has been made an example of. Ethiopia's been made an example of, because the Ethiopians in 1896 defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa. And that's when these ideas that the Ethiopians really weren't black came into being. Because the Italians could not reconcile the fact that they were beat up by a bunch of black people. So the idea that the Ethiopians really aren't black after all, they're really not Negroes, that idea was implanted. So this is Haiti, and I had to climb a small mountain to get to this community. I still have tears in my eyes from that climb, and every time I tell the story, the mountain gets a little higher. But it was no joke. I went to a Vodun Maroon community, and it was really serious getting up there. And these were the children who lived in that community. And what you notice about them are their eyes. Look here. And here. And look at this child. I showed this to my sister in Los Angeles. She says, Runoko, I really don't want to see that. They scare me. But look at this child right here. It does look a little creepy a little bit, you know?
I didn't do it.
And as I got ready to leave, they said, well, you know you have to come back, right? Once you come here, you're an honorary member of the community. I got there, climbed this mountain, and there was a whole band, a rah-rah band they call rah-rah music. There's a lot of Haitians here, so you know Haitians. And they had a special little room for me set up in this house they had recently constructed. And here I am sitting down in the bed, and I'll be damned if a tarantula doesn't slowly crawl across the bed. Like, what's up, brother? And I started hollering. People must have thought somebody was being murdered in my room. So people from the community started coming. And I said, it's a tarantula, it's a tarantula. And the community was split. One half of the community said, kill it. And another said, this is probably an ancestor coming back. I said, kill that And they did. We got some bug spray. Well, I wasn't taking a chance. If it's an ancestor, forgive me. But the ancestor took the form of a tarantula, so that's the price you pay when you come back. All from Haiti. And the poverty of Haiti is just overwhelming. One, I did a presentation at the university. This was right before the big earthquake. And two of the university students come up to me and say, you know, Professor, I have a question. I said, okay, what is the question? The brother said, you think we should have remained slaves to the French? Maybe our lives would be better today. You got to be really suffering to even think of a question like that. Honduras, these are the people called the Gariganu or Garifuna, who say they were never enslaved. All right. That's easily rectified. You can hear me now? You all are so quiet. I just see you laughing. These are right here in the United States. This is a school. You got eyes here too. A school in Washington, D.C. And right not long after I spoke there, two of the teachers who invited me got canned. This is Howard University Middle School, HBCU. You may have heard about that scandal. India, are original photographs. None of these are from books. In a Muslim community of untouchables in the north, and they're much lighter. In fact, this brother is a surgeon. He said, Runoko, you must be wondering, I don't know why that happened. He says, you must be wondering why we are lighter in the north than we are in the south. I said, well, it did cross my mind. He says, because of thousands of years in the sexual trafficking of our women. So this is in the north. And this is a village that I visited, and a massacre had taken place about a week before. 63 of these people had been killed. So I was brought there to kind of investigate. This was way back in 1998. And the parents, the adults would not let me photograph them. They thought my camera was a gun and I was going to shoot them. But you could even see the look of apprehension on the faces of these children as I photographed them. These are the black untouchables of India, also known as Dalits. Jordan, this is a Bedouin boy. Now, I'm in Jordan to visit a place called Petra, a magnificent archaeological site. And one of the tombs in Petra is called the monastery. It's 1,000 steps up. Now, to me, 1,000 steps, when you say it, doesn't sound impressive. And so I was asked several times, do you want a donkey, you want a horse, you want a camel? I said, no. Why should I spend that money? I'll walk up there. And after about 25 steps, I said, well, wait a minute now, let me think about it. And then at 50 steps, I said, well, I wonder which of those animals is still available. And 100 steps, I just sat down. So all at once, this little boy comes up with this little bitty donkey, and naturally, when I tell the story, the donkey gets smaller. A little white donkey says, sir, I'll take you up there for 10 Jordanian dinar. $15. I said, okay, let's do it. I was much larger than the donkey, and we're on the side of a cliff. And the donkey started, moving towards the cliff like that. I said, here's 20 dinar, let me off this thing. And an interesting thing happened. Here I am with this child, and one of the other people working there said, oh, he must be your father, pointing to me. And that little boy said, no, he's not. Now, I don't think I'm a bad father. What that boy was saying, I'm not black like him. That's what he was saying. This is a Bedouin child in Jordan. These take us to Mexico. And this is a trip in Costa Chica, Mexico, where I was invited by Mother Taneta Muhammad. And she liked me, I liked her. She's an ancestor now, wonderful woman, wonderful, sweet lady. And she lived in Mexico. And she would go to these programs in a place called Costa Chica, which means small coast south of Acapulco. And we spoke at a program called the Encuentro. And I gave, I think, a very good presentation. And these are some of the children. Now, these children have very, very low self-esteem, too. All they basically know is they were slaves. And just like I told you about the little girl in Ecuador, something similar happened here. I remember an older brother with a big sombrero on his head, real macho-looking guy, just broke down and cried like a baby after the presentation. He said, I never heard those things. All I knew is we were slaves. I didn't know black people built the pyramids. History is very powerful. That's why they don't teach you this in school. Because once you know who you are, then the game is over. But if you think you ain't nothing, if you think you a nigga, then hey, the system don't have anything to worry about. Then stop using that word. And stop defending the use of the word. Don't call black women female dogs. In fact, don't call any woman that. What's up with that? Sunk so low that that's how we see ourselves and that's how we define ourselves. Why would you expect the world to respect you if you don't respect yourself? You can call the white man the devil if you want to, if that makes you feel good. But it's up to you to change the situation that we're in, and just calling people names is not enough. All right. All from Mexico. That's one of my favorite pictures right here. Now, this little girl and I got in an argument with. When you get to be my age, you can actually think of adults as children now. And this girl was about 19. She came to my presentation, and I don't mean any harm. I said, sister, you're very, very pretty. I just believe in complimenting people without any strings attached. You ain't got to want nothing. Just say something. It doesn't hurt you to say something nice about a person. And she says, no, I'm not. I thought You know, since I don't speak much Spanish, she must have misunderstood. I said, oh, you're very pretty. No, I'm not. I said, what do you mean? She said, I'm black, I'm ugly. And so we see ourselves a lot of times. Mexico. And you can see there's a mixture with Native Americans there. These are Africans who were brought there as a result of enslavement. All from Mexico. That's a pretty girl right there. Morocco. And the Netherlands. I got stranded in the Netherlands once. I was on my way to Libya. I had to transit through Amsterdam. And when I tried to board the plane, KLM, they wouldn't let me on the plane. They said, there's a problem with your visa. And so we never did get it resolved. And so after I couldn't get on the plane, I booked an expensive hotel. I wanted to treat myself because I was mad. And what did I do? Go get on Facebook and to vent. And a couple of sisters said, Runoko, you're not supposed to go to Libya. We live in the southern part of the Netherlands. You're supposed to come here and hang out with us. And we're going to come get you. And you're going to stay with us. And I stayed with them for a week. Met their husbands and families, and they became my guardian angels in the Netherlands. And they organized a program for me, and these are the children who came. Black people in Holland. Niger. This brother's from a group called the Wodabi. And you've seen the Wodabi on TV and in books and stuff. The men, young men, paint themselves up with all this makeup, and to me they look very, very feminine. It's a kind of a rites of passage thing. And they told me, they said, look, we've never met an African American before, but we heard that African Americans, that black people were in America, Africans were in America. So the French tourists told us these things, but they never told us how you got to America. I said, have a seat. This is going to take a minute or two. These are the Wodabi in Niger. Nubia, another very, very pretty little girl who I thought about infanticide here. This little girl tried to sell me something, a little doll, and I bought it. And it turned out, I looked at the bottom of it, it was made from China. And she sold it to me for $10. I said, okay. And then her mother had the nerve to come and try to sell me another one. And I said, well, I bought one. And she says, but you didn't buy it from me. And I said, well, that's too bad. So this girl started cursing and acting up. And the Nile River was very close. And my thing was, I wonder if this child can swim because I'm going to throw her in this bottle of water. But doesn't she look innocent? A Nubian. And Nubian boys. And Peru, all from Peru and South America, little Rastafarian child. Philippines, an image of a black child in ancient Rome, a marbled head. This is 2,000 years old. This one is from Senegal. We're in the S's, so we're going to finish up soon. And here is a place called Gorée Island. Now, Gorée Island has a dungeon, had two dungeons, or two complexes. And of course, you have these places in Nigeria, in Ghana, and you have a men's dungeon and a women's dungeon all the time. The women and men will be separated. And you can, you know, in the men's dungeon, you have these dark holes where the brothers have been branded, captured, enslaved, no air conditioning, no flushing toilet, no toilets, no running water, no light, none of that. You're in a dark hole in your chain, you've been branded.
Is this one of the final places before the final passage?
What you call before you go through the door of no return, or the middle passage. This is just after you've been caught and marched to the coast. And you're in one of these holding pens. Some people have the nerve to call them castles. And do we even have to imagine what went on in the women's dungeon? And how our sisters were exploited and taken advantage of. But in Senegal, in Gorée Island, you had an infant's dungeon, a children's dungeon. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Now, I'm in the men's dungeon. My wife, my mother, my grandmother, my sister, my daughter, my auntie, my niece is in the women's dungeon. And then in the distance from the infant's dungeon, your child, or your grandchild, or your niece, or your nephew, Daddy, Mama, come get me. I'm scared, Daddy. Where are you? And this went on for hundreds of years. Is there any wonder why we are crazy today? Because we've never dealt with these things. If you have a shooting in the United States today at your job, heaven forbid, or your school, somebody's going to come out. You're going to have a therapist, a psychologist. Enslaved Africans never had that. Nobody ever walked us through that trauma.
That's right.
And then the black codes and lynchings and mass incarcerations and racial profiling. Is it any wonder why we are crazy and we do the things that we do? And we don't talk about these things most of the time because who would think that a human being could put a child in a dungeon? That almost defies imagination. And yet this is a part of our experience. All right. Suriname in South America, and here I am with the people called the Maroons. This is deep in the Amazon. The Maroons were the people who escaped from enslavement and went into the interior, into the bush, and established their own communities. And many of them retain African culture and tradition more than some people in Africa. Now, these are just some of the countries that I visited. This is Suriname. This is a Dutch colony in South America. The Dutch were the cruelest of all the enslavers. They invented ingenious processes to torture people. For example, the French did the same thing. They may take an African and, sugar cane plantations were the big thing, sugar cane. And you'd have to boil the sugar in a big vat. Sometimes they would throw Africans in a boiling vat of sugar, things like that. And that's what these people were fighting against. Suriname, Togo in West Africa, Tunisia, I showed that one before, Uganda. This little girl, this presentation I gave at an orphanage for children whose parents had died of AIDS. Now, I do presentations of all sorts, in prisons, schools, you name it. And I try to do the same presentations in prisons and in an orphanage that I would do at Harvard. I think they deserve the same dignity and the same respect. And here I am in northern Uganda, a place called Langa, or the community, the people speaking language called Langa, and I was given a new name here. Now my name is Runoko Rashidi Okelo. Runoko Rashidi is a name I was given as a university student. Runoko is shown up from Zimbabwe, it means handsome. I didn't pick this name now. And Rashidi is a name from Tanzania, it's Kiswahili, it means teacher or counselor. And Okelo means he who gives or he who brings. Because I brought a few school supplies to this war zone, just a few school supplies, and they were so overwhelmed that they gave me the name Okelo. So Runoko Rashidi means the handsome teacher who brings gifts. Yeah. Just call me Runoko. Now here's a funny one in the UK. Now I posted a picture and I was looking for it on Facebook of a little bitty infant laying on a bed, looking at a book with a picture of Sojourner Truth. You've heard of Sojourner Truth? And I'm doing a presentation in London about 3 years ago, and this woman comes and says, that's my daughter you've been showing on Facebook? And here she is. And it was really, really, really funny. So we insisted on having a picture taken, and as soon as the picture was over, that baby started crying, crying, crying. She couldn't wait to get away from me. And of course, the US experience. The little girls who were killed in that Birmingham bombing in 1963. And this is my sister, and my youngest sister, and this is me when I was about 2 years old. Very, very handsome, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Still handsome. At a lecture in St. Louis, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, and Tampa, and Cleveland, and Tampa again, and Brooklyn, and Chicago, and Dallas, and Philadelphia. So that's what I do. These are children at the Timbuktu Institute in Detroit, Newark, New Jersey. My first picture I ever took, right here. I was a university student, I was about 18 years old, and I went to wash my clothes at a laundromat, and I had my camera and took this picture of this little boy. I wonder if he's still alive today, or where he is. He might be in the room. Zimbabwe, the land of Robert Mugabe, who's one of the heads of state of Africa that I have a degree of respect for. And finally, just a few images of some of our leaders and their children. Since yesterday was Father's Day, I tell people I celebrate and recognize my father every day. I don't wait for white people to say, okay, here you do it, this is your chance. We're so programmed. A couple weeks ago, everybody was talking about this fake black woman on Facebook. And we moved from one thing to another like gossip. Why do we need Europeans to tell us when it's okay to celebrate who we are? This is Mother's Day. Send your mother a rose. This is Father's Day. Tell your father you love him. Shouldn't we do these things every day? We need a special occasion. It needs to be sanctioned. We need to be given permission. Anyway, this is Bob and Rita Marley and Malcolm. And this is something to remember now. Now, I know this is hard work to change what we do, but I mean, it makes perfect sense. And we give our children to the descendants of the same people who enslaved us. Without thinking, we drop them off every day and pick them up every day and then wonder why we do the crazy things we do. Here's a system that tells us we don't have any worth, we don't have any humanity, and we say, here our children indoctrinate now. So only a fool would let his enemy teach his children. That tells you the situation we're in, because most of the time we don't even think about these things. Okay. Kwame Nkrumah and his children, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, father and family man, and Malcolm again. I think this picture is right out there. And it's okay to talk about Malcolm since we're in Boston. Otherwise, I guess we're not supposed to talk about him, right?
Like he lives right around the corner.
Yeah. And MLK and his children, and me and mine. All right. Now that's and Trayvon. Ooh, I guess we've forgotten about him, right? That was what, a year ago? So we moved from crisis to crisis. From Trayvon to, what's his name, Eric Garner? Mike Brown. And tomorrow there'll be another one. And then Charleston. And then tomorrow there'll be another one. And we'll get mad. And we'll have a prayer vigil. And we'll forgive people who don't ask for forgiveness. They ain't got to worry about me forgiving them. Or forgetting. But black people will forgive a person that don't even ask for forgiveness. And people exploit that. Because we're the people who say, I don't see color. I don't see race. We're all the same. And it doesn't matter. And you can't help who you fall in love with. And it doesn't matter who you give your money to. And other people say, these Negroes are insane. Let's take their money. Because they're crazy anyway. And they're right, we are crazy. Based on our behavior. Getting angry is not enough. We need to get organized. All right? So that's the first presentation. All right? Make the announcement, because I'm only going to take a second. And then we can take a break. I'll do the next one, will be real short.
Okay, for those of you who just came in and you didn't hear the whole spiel, we need to support institutions in our community. So I'm going to pass around the bucket to those who may just have arrived so that you can donate, or if you didn't do it at the door, this is a donation for the museum itself. We will also take another donation for Dr. Rashidi and the work that he's done and is shown here for us. Now, thus far, what you see, do you feel like that's worthwhile information? Yes. So we're going to pass this around to anybody. I know y'all just came in, so just pass it around to anybody who may have not come in, and y'all can kind of, do that yourselves. And y'all see too, this brother's not only knowledgeable and has a lot of information, but I also call him a scholar with swag, because you get to laugh a little. Everything don't got to be so, right? All right.
And don't get an attitude because he asks you to put something in there. Scholars pay rent too. I post these pictures on Facebook and people say, oh, Runoko, they're wonderful. But I almost will never anybody say, how can I help? What do you need? How can I show some support? We don't think that way. I guess people think I'm independently wealthy and I travel all over the world, or Bill Gates is giving me money. Deval Patrick sent me a check. Barack Obama said, I got your back. No, it doesn't work like that. And if we don't support our scholars, we don't really have a right to complain. So be happy to put something in there. Be glad to do it. Ask if we can do it again. What we need is a liberation mentality. not just a mentality of victimization and do for me and save me. A lot of times we say we need another leader. For what? To die for our sins? To do the things that we're not willing to do for ourselves? Who in their right mind would want to lead black people? What form of insanity do you have? We don't support our leaders, generally speaking, but you'll give money to Creflo Dollar for a $65 million check and won't complain. But when we ask to pass the hat, oh, Runoko, I can't do that. It ain't free. We gotta pay? Yeah, liberation costs. All right. This is the new book, Uncovering the African Past, and it's one of my best works. I'm gonna show you the pictures in there, and then we can take a break. You can purchase the book or DVD if you can, and then if there's time, I'll show you one last brief presentation that I think you'll enjoy. All right. A lot of the book focuses not just on the life of Ivan Van Sertima, but on the contributions that I made to a journal called the Journal of African Civilizations. And the writings that were published here in this book are most of my writings on the Nile Valley, on Egypt. So let me just go through these quickly. I think you'll like them. Again, original pictures. This is from, when we go through the dynasties now. We went to the images of children from A through Z. This time we're going to go from the early dynastic period to the end of it. A dynasty is a family of rulers, one member of the family coming after the other for an extended period of time. A dynasty is a royal family. And in ancient Egypt there were 30 of them, so we're going to look at all those dynastic periods. This is called the Scorpion Mace Head. This is the original Scorpion King. This is at Oxford University, the Ashmolean Museum, and it's called the Scorpion Mace Head because, and he's the Scorpion King because you see a scorpion here. You see the tail, and this is the African King. This is about 5,200 years old. This is the first king of Egypt, the first pharaoh of the United States of Egypt, we should say. Upper and Lower Egypt. His name is Narmer or Aha. How many of you have heard of Imhotep? This is the mother of Imhotep. Not the Imhotep in the mummy movies now, but the world's first scientist, a multi-genius. This is his mother. So if there was ever any doubt about Imhotep's ethnicity, this should resolve it. I took this picture in the Louvre in Paris, and this is Imhotep himself, the world's first scientist. This is a pharaoh called Sneferu. He is responsible for 3 pyramids. This picture is right here in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. I'm going to show you this Wednesday night, inshallah, God willing. Now here's one of the Sphinx. How many of you have heard that Napoleon shot the nose off the Sphinx? It's not true. Napoleon got a bad rap. Now I'm the last one to defend Napoleon. This was done in 1737, this drawing. Napoleon didn't even get to Egypt until 1798. He wasn't even born when this was done. The face of the Sphinx was damaged by a group of white slaves 700-800 years ago. They're kind of like this group now, these common criminals called ISIS or ISIL. And they saw poor Makhet of the Great Sphinx as a kind of a form of idolatry. So the idea that Napoleon shattered that is just a myth. Here's a fragment of the beard of the Great Sphinx. This is in the British Museum. This one is in Berlin. This is an image of a pyramid builder in Paris, in the Louvre. Right here again in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, Menkaure. This pharaoh is named Sahura. This is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'm just going to go through these quick. Now you see a lot of these with the noses missing and gouged out, and that can't be an accident. This is in the Louvre. And these images are of a black king named Mentuhotep II. This one is in New York City. Look at this beautiful piece right here. This is Amenhotep I from the 12th royal family. Look at the hair, and you can see how the paint has faded. You can see how dark it would have originally been. I'll just go through these quick. Look how badly this one has been damaged, and look at those big Barack Obama ears. No, seriously. The idea was the bigger the ear, the more you could hear. The more you heard, the more you would know. And the more you knew, the more power you would possess. And another example of that. This is in Cambridge. Here's a good one. Here's another one I climbed 1,000 steps. I don't know how I could have done it, but I did. And I climbed up the steps to get into this series of tombs because you have martial arts in these tombs. The depictions of martial arts. This is 4,000 years ago. So before Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, you could see black people engaged in martial postures in the Valley of the Nile. Africans invented almost everything positive in the world. When I do presentations, I start off typically, I've lectured in 60 countries now, and I ask people, what do you think of when you think of Africa? Wild animals, poverty, disease, always get those answers. And I tell people, Africa's where the first people came from. Africa's where people first stood on 2 feet. Africa's where people first had a house, not a house. Africans where people first sailed a boat, had mathematics, buried the dead, played music, charted the stars in the heavens, had philosophy and morality and religion. And people began to say, well, maybe Africa isn't such a bad place after all. And a lot of us are anti-African in our thinking. Many of us would rather be anything other than an African. So we'd be Moors, the Hebrew Israelites, or anything other than an African because we've been taught to be ashamed of Africa. We should spend more time talking about where we were taken from instead of where we got dropped off. Because the people who were taken from Africa weren't Jamaicans or Brazilians or Bajans or Trinidadians or Haitians. They were African people. And Africa is not named after a Roman general. We need to stop repeating that nonsense. That's just foolishness. The Roman general is named after Africa, not the reverse of that. So we have a lot of work to do. All right, these images, this is almost Nefertari. I love to talk about black women. I love black women. I love to sing their praises, their majesty, their intellect all the time. And this is one of the greatest. This is almost Nefertari. And if you're unfamiliar with that, get you a black woman. Check it out. You see what I'm talking about. I'll find you one. If you need help, I'll help you. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of them right here. Probably just looking for a good brother. In many cases, black men have really dropped the ball. So don't be telling me you can't find a good sister. If you are, you're either blind or you ain't looking for one. Hatshepsut. Now notice nobody said amen or right on or brother. Runoko, you're on. We justify what we do. Kim Kardashian is not my standard of beauty.
That's right.
Yeah. No plastic surgery, you can look like anything. People say, well, she's not really white. What is she? Makare Hatshepsut. Tutmos III. This is Amenhotep III. Queen Tai. Queen Tai. The children of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai. Akhenaten, who looks like Barack Obama. Nefertiti, the one you don't get to see. One of the children of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Seti I, Ramses the Great, Ramses the Great, Ramses the Great, and Ramses the Great. Nefertari. Kamwasit, this is the most distinguished son of Ramses the Great. Abu Simbel, upon which Mount Rushmore is patterned. Ramses III. A sister named Kero Mama. A black woman named Amenetus, the most powerful woman in the world. King Taharka, mentioned in the Old Testament 3-4 times. Taharka again. This king's name is Amasis. This is in the Capitolini Museum in Rome. Cleopatra VII, who had either an African mother or African grandmother. If you ever wonder what Cleopatra looked like, there she goes. And this is Jesus the Christ. I took this picture in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. I'm in the museum with a camera, which I wasn't supposed to have, and I see this picture, and I was determined, no matter what, to photograph it. So I waited until I didn't see anybody. And I got ready to focus and click. My head is swiveling around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. All at once, the Arab Museum official comes out of nowhere and shouts at me. The great Runoko Rashidi shouts at me and says, no photography allowed. Now, my inclination was to shout back. I have a terrible temper that I've been battling with all my life with varying degrees of success. But for once in my life, I didn't lose my temper, and I reached in my pocket and gave the guy $1. He said, okay. Just like, talking about attitude adjustment. And I said, this guy comes cheap, so I gave him $2. I said, sir, I suggest you use a flash. Now, if I had given him a 20, he said, look, I'm gonna walk you out of here with this. And I know people say the color of Christ don't matter. If it don't matter, why is he white all the time? If it don't matter.
Right.
It does matter. Everything matters. Everything we do matters. Everything we do makes a statement about us. Let's not pretend otherwise. Mut, from which we derive the term mother, and Heheru, also known as Hathor. And again, the cover of the book, I said in Heru. From ancient Carthage, and ancient Iraq, and ancient Lebanon, and ancient China, and China again, and ancient Europe from the island of Crete, and Spain 1,000 years before the Moors, and Andromeda, who the Greeks considered an Ethiopian princess. The Andromeda Galaxy is named after a black woman. From the Etruscan civilization that preceded the Romans, the marble head I showed you from ancient Rome, one of the three wise kings who came to pay homage to the Christ child in the manger in Bethlehem. In the European Renaissance, it was common to portray the youngest of the three kings as an Ethiopian, as a black man, and another one, and another one. This is called, these are all from the European Renaissance, this is called Moses and his Ethiopian wife. I would say the artist got it half right. Look at this one now. This one I took at a museum in Raleigh, North Carolina, last spring. And this is from the Italian Renaissance too, and you can see they're about to behead this guy. I don't know what he did, but he made somebody mad, and they're about to lop his head off. But look at what's on these shields, the heads of Moors. This is 700 years old in Italy. And here's a beautiful one. This is the mother of Alejandro de Medici. This is on a cluster of cameos in the Louvre in Paris. This is the mother of the first black head of state in the modern Western world. He was the Duke of Florence from 1529 to 1537. This is his mother. So 500 years before Barack Obama was a black head of state in the Western world. Saint Benedict of Palermo, a black saint. And the Olmec heads, these are the originals. Last year I photographed 15 of the 17 known to exist. Next month I'm going to get those other two. And all these are pictures in the book. I do encourage you to purchase the book. First time it's been available in this part of the world. And these are the Olmec heads that represent a dynasty of African kings in ancient Mexico. No two are alike. This one weighs 80,000 pounds. It's called the Kobate head. It looks like he's sleeping or squinting, like I see a couple of you all doing now. I don't mean squinting either. Now here's the one with the braids in the back. And you can see the braids here in the back of the head. Yeah, people tell you these aren't really African, they just look like Africans. They're not black, they just look like black people.
I have a twofold question.
Oh, no twofold questions. We're going to have a Q&A, so just hold off on that. This one is called El Negro. And European scholars don't even acknowledge this piece right here. This is thousands of years old, and they won't even talk about it. Look at this. He could be from Roxbury. And I understand Roxbury is being regentrified. When I first came to Roxbury, I asked the taxi driver, could we be in the right place? I thought Roxbury was a black community. Oh, he's from ancient Mexico. This is in Boston, in the Museum of Fine Arts. Here's a brother being castrated. And I think this is what happened to a lot of those Africans who came to the ancient world. Mayan bowl with black skin warriors in Belize. Another one. These are from ancient Mexico. They look straight out of Egypt. These are thousands of years old. And it's not taught in the Mexican schools either. In fact, Mexican scholars would be angry at the mere suggestion that black people came to America before Columbus from Peru, Canada, and some of the scholars themselves. I'm going to finish this up and we'll take a break, and if you guys want to see some more, we will. Here's Ivan Van Sertima, the author of They Came Before Columbus and one of my mentors, and the great Chancellor Williams, who wrote the book Destruction of Black Civilization. That book made me want to be a historian. This is another, these are all mentors of mine. This is this is LeGrand Clegg. He's the city attorney of Compton, California, an early writer on the African diaspora. Ivan Van Sertima himself. And this brother's name's Majid Mahdi. He was the person that made me interested in studying Egypt. He was the victim of a hit-and-run accident. And there's Runoko Rashidi. You barely recognize him. He had a little afro and he had a tie on. That was a clip-on tie. With the great Dr. John Henry Clark. And I guess we have to put a picture of Dr. Ben in here now. And this is another great African scholar named John G. Jackson. We do range in complexion from snow to crow and bright to night. And I love all black people. I don't care what complexion you are. Black is more than a color. It's also a culture. Jan Carew, the mentor of Ivan Van Sertima from Guyana. This is a postcard that Ivan sent me from his only trip to Egypt. He asked me who I should go with. I told him a man named Asa Hilliard, because I said if you go with Dr. Ben, y'all gonna be fighting. So he went with Asa and he sent me this postcard of Akhenaten. A pre-Columbian figurine, also Olmec. This is in a museum in Barcelona. And this is the last picture I'll show, and then we'll take a break. Now, a funny thing happened, and I believe in the ancestors. I believe that they're watching over us all the time, and I call them on all the time. And so, a few months ago, I took a group to Turkey and Cameroon, and then I went to visit my daughter in Paris. So I had to fly back to Istanbul, and I decided before I went to Paris, before I resumed my full-time duties as a father, and I love my daughter, as you no doubt tell, I would stop in Athens. I've been to Athens twice before to go to the National Museum to see the Egyptian collection with no success. The first time the museum was closed, renovation for the Olympic Games. And the second time I went there, the Egyptian section was closed, which is what I came to see. So I figured I'd give it one more try. So I missed my flight. I didn't get to Greece until late on a Saturday night, and I'm leaving Monday morning for Paris. I had one day, Sunday. So early Sunday morning, first thing, I get a taxi, I go to the museum, and I'm blessed to know that the museum is open. So that much is done. Get in the museum, I walk around, and sure enough, the Egyptian section is closed. The door is bolted shut. I was so hurt, so disappointed, and I was saying it loud, not angry, but so, how could something like this happen? And so this woman, white woman, naturally a Greek woman, said, "Sir, what's the problem?" And I said, "I flew all the way from New York." I didn't fly from New York, but she didn't need to know that. I'm trying to build a case. I said, "I flew all the way from New York. I'm a visiting scholar. I went to see the Egyptian section. The Egyptian section is closed." "Oh my God, how could you do such a terrible thing? The world's coming to an end." She says, "Hold on just a minute." And so she said, "Look, I'm not making any promises. Just have a seat if you don't mind, sir." I said, "Okay." So she goes and makes a phone call. She says, "Just have a seat, no promises." So wouldn't you know it, 15 minutes later, a guy comes down with a ring of keys like this big, and he opens the door, and he says, "You wanted to see the Egyptian section?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Come with me." And nobody else who was looking at this whole thing unfold could get in. He said, "This is just for him." He opens the door, and the door is this thick, big metal door, and locks. I'm kind of scared, like, what's up here? And he locks the door, and he turns on the light, and he says, "Okay, here it is." I said, "I can take pictures?" He says, "Yeah." "You have a camera, right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, how much time do I have?" He says, "How much time do you want?" And he sits down, and I wandered through there. This is the National Museum of Greece. I've never had an experience like that in my life. He said, "Okay, you got your wish." And none of those other people who wanted to get in, he let in. Now, I believe that's the ancestors. You could say God, or it's fate, or coincidence. I think that all of us have a mission to uplift our people in some way or another. Everybody's not going to do the same thing. Everybody's not going to do what this brother does, what this brother does, what this sister does. But we can all do something. And I think, in a sense, that was kind of opening a door and saying what people say in the church. If you take one step, God will take two, or something like that. And I believe that's how the ancestors operate. And they're operating right now. And maybe that's how they opened up this museum at the last minute for us to do this. And look how many people have come. We had a good turnout.
That's right.
So anyway, that's presentation number 2. So let's take a break. Maybe sell some books, eat some bananas, drink some water, stretch your legs.
How long a break you want to take, sir?
How long you want it to be? If we say 10 minutes, it'll be 20. So let's say 10. Let's say 8. 8 African minutes, which means about 15 minutes. Again, the museum, Jamal, give them a big round of applause. All right. All right. These are just recent travels. So this will be real easy and I'll go through them quick. When I say recent, I mean this year and mostly the last couple months. My great hero, you know, people without knowledge of his past is like a tree without roots, said Marcus Garvey. I'm a Garveyite, and Garvey was the President General and the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. I'm the official traveling ambassador of that organization. So I think that what he said is very profound. People without knowledge of his past is like a tree without roots. Now these are just travels quite recently. Reminds me, I left a few out, but it's okay. This is in Ethiopia. This is one of the most impressive churches in the world. This is the Church of San George at a place called Lalibela. And what they did is they went to a certain spot and just started to dig in the earth, to dig in the ground, and they came up with this right here. And local people, excuse me, believe it was built by angels. These are off Ethiopia.
How big is that?
Oh, it's hard to say. I'd say it's about, how big is it? I'd say it's about 6 stories.
Wow.
So let's suppose you just went to a certain spot and you took picks and shovels and you started to dig down in the earth.
And what is that?
This is in Ethiopia. The first section will be from my recent travels in Ethiopia. These are just some of the children. You know, I love our children. This brother's in southern Ethiopia. These are the traditional people there. You can see very traditional, bare-breasted. I took a picture of the elder and he insisted that he go get his wife, and that meant they were both going to get paid. I think I showed this picture earlier. These are the people called the Hamar, H-A-M-A-R, and I guess they put ochre in their hair. And they were not terribly welcoming to us. They weren't the friendliest people in the world. And this is one of the places I went to where I didn't feel, coming from their part, racial solidarity. Now for me, whenever I see black people of any kind, I'm excited, you know, but they didn't seem to feel like that way. I think they just thought of us as just another group of foreigners. This group is from a community called the Bina. And I never show these on Facebook because Facebook says you can show people killing one another, but you can't show women's breasts. And they didn't make any effort to cover up. And they don't just wear this because they do it for photographic purposes. This is the way they dress, and this is how they live. These are the people of southern Ethiopia. Very handsome people. And you can see hers is freshly done. It looks actually wet. Now this brother I kind of almost got in a scrap with because they're very aggressive. And so we're in a market. This is from a group called the Hamar, H-A-M-A-R. And they all look like people that we know. So we were in a marketplace, and I asked this brother if I could take his picture. And he kind of said, well, okay, yeah. And we agreed to 5 birr, which is about 25 cents. Birr is the Ethiopian currency. And this money is all beat up looking, okay? So I took the picture, and I gave him the birr, and he kind of like had an attitude. And I don't know if he was saying, I want more, or he was saying, I don't like this note, give me a fresh one. And I'm like, well, this is all I have, and this is what we agreed to, and the money we'll spend. And so he just kind of stood there and wouldn't take the money. So I said, okay. And I started walking off. And some sister, because the crowd had started to gather up, grabbed me by the shoulder. And I just recall, look, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. And so I'm not easily intimidated. And I said, do you want the money or not? And another crowd started to gather. And I started to raise my middle finger in the air, and I walked off, and it was good. It started to get ugly. And finally he said, okay, give it to me. And I said, all right, but he never did smile or anything like that. Anyway, it's a very distinguished photograph. Look, I love African people. I love being in Africa, but I don't hold my head down to anybody. And I don't think African Americans are any less superior or more inferior than anybody else. I'm glad to be in Africa, but I don't believe that I need to take guff from anybody. Nor am I going to give attitude. All right, anyway, Southern Ethiopia. And some of these people just weren't friendly at all. And some of them were very friendly. This looks like a brother whose mother I used to date in Canada. You can see very traditional looking people. I wonder what the life expectancy is among them, because I don't think that the health care in this part of the motherland is particularly good. She had a friendly look on her face. She wasn't very friendly though, but she had a friendly look. Is she breastfeeding?
Yeah.
No, some of these pictures I hadn't even looked at before. I think this group is called the Ari, and they live on the bank of the Omo River. Now these people there's the river. It's like being in the Garden of Eden, we thought. Lush, very people spread out, not closely populated at all. This is not far from the border with Kenya and not far from Uganda. And southern Ethiopia and northern Ethiopia are like two different countries. Look at the camera. I'm paying you $5. This little child I really liked. I showed this picture earlier. And I think he was fascinated by my beard, the little baby. Like, what is that? What manner of man is this? And apparently they were looking at her hair too. I think white hair is just something very uncommon among them. Maybe they put all that ochre in their hair. Okay, go through these quickly, all from southern Ethiopia. Now this little girl was very cheerful, and I didn't notice how poor she was until later on. Look at the shirt. So they don't have much, but they have beautiful spirit. And this is a group, I think, they're either Ari or Afi, A-R-I or A-F-Y, and I like this community more than any other community that we visited. I was the tour leader, and I was told that we had some extra time so we could visit this group, which wasn't on our itinerary. And we went in their community, and I loved it from the moment we got off the bus. And they danced for us, and they made up this kind of moonshine, which I tasted. And I'm sorry to say that the other members of the tour group expected to taste it too, because I thought as a tour leader, I would represent the group and drink all of it. The visitor says, Runoko, where's ours? So we had to give it up, and I was a little annoyed at that. Now in the north, I drank a lot of the moonshine. We call it high blood pressure medicine, and it's very, very, very strong stuff. And I wonder if they suffer from the same things that we suffer from, high blood pressure and diabetes and stuff. They look healthy. I didn't see anybody that looked like they were hungry. This is just a lecture I gave on the last day I was in Addis Ababa. Rastafarian brother from the States, me, and an Ethiopian brother. These are the people called the Mercy, and these were the most aggressive of them all. And we were told that when we went to visit them, we would go in the morning before it got hot and before they started to drink. Because the more they drank, the more aggressive they would become. And they're used to tourists coming down there, and they insist, all these groups insist that they pay them the designated amount, which is $5. So we had a lot of little $5 notes. And what they would do is they wouldn't say, like a couple times I said, hold on a minute, that wasn't a good picture. No. Once that camera clicks, that was $5. And they didn't care if you got a bad photograph or it was blinking or somebody shut their eyes, and they would count. And they wouldn't let you sneak a photograph. We had a couple sisters who were a little sneaky, and they thought they would take a picture when nobody was looking. and they wouldn't play in that. We drove in 3 Jeeps because the roads were very poor, and there were a couple sisters in one Jeep that were kind of slick, or thought they were. And they started to pull out, and a bunch of boys, 13, 14 years old, surrounded the car. And they had rocks and sticks. And the driver of the car got out and roughed one of those little boys up. And he said, "To hell with that, you go to pay 5 burr, or you guys aren't leaving." And they paid that money, and then they were all friendly again. Look, and these are the people who put the plates in their lips. Now there's different, explanations as to how that came about. The most popular explanation was they put that in there to make themselves look unattractive to the slave catchers. And it became part of their tradition. And I'm going to show you, I think, one more like that. Oh, look at these big natural adornment. I'm trying to find one more. I'll show it twice. Uh-oh. There's a good one. And that the plates, as they grow older, they put bigger and bigger plates in there and the lips stretch. And it's really unhealthy. It's hard to eat because the lips are hanging way down like that. But that's a part of their tradition. And they tried to explain it to us, but I tell you, it was very hot. And there were flies and mosquitoes, and they were very aggressive. So I wasn't really in the mood for a long explanation. I wanted to say, let me take my picture and get back in the car. These are the pictures you see in the books and stuff. We are actually with these folks. And you can see, these are the Mercy, M-U-R-S-I. This is from the group called the Hamar. So is she. See, even the child looks like he's got an attitude. At a university lecture I gave in a place called Sodo, this is the president of the university, they just ate it up. Faculty members, staff, everybody wanted to see the pictures. At the university, they also have a replica of the Olmec head from Mexico, not an actual head. All the real heads are in Mexico, but replicas of the heads are in different places. Now you might ask, why would Mexico, you can see from the people of Mexico to the people of Ethiopia, why would they do that? And that's because they have a long relationship. It was Mexico that insisted that Haile Selassie be able to speak to the League of Nations in 1936 when Ethiopia invaded. Mexico stood up for Ethiopia, and they've had a long relationship. And so have they had with Russia, because Ethiopia was a part of the Cold War. And you had a communist government in the 1970s, and here's a brother from Russia, Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, the father of Russian literature, whose ancestor, according to some people, was from Ethiopia. This is the tomb of Haile Selassie I. The Rastafarians don't want to hear that because they want to say that Selassie I never died. But we were told this is his tomb. Let's just go through this quick. Me in front of one of those Olmec heads. This is a sister on the Blue Nile. There are different branches of the Nile. The White Nile, the Blue Nile, the Victoria Nile, and they all flow into the one mighty river. And in this country, women work very, very, very hard. Life is not paradise for them. You see them carrying big loads of sticks on their back, firewood that they sell for next to nothing, for $1 or $2, a big load, and some of them be all hunched over like that. It's really sad to see that. Ethiopia is one of the poorest countries in the world. From Lebanon, this is actually photographs in the British Museum. These are what are called the Nimrud ivories. And this is from a place called Beers Nimrud that the group ISIS or ISIL bulldozed. And these are ancient pieces actually from Egypt. This is a photograph in the British Museum. I'm sure that this is a coin with the African general Hannibal there. Maybe the only likeness of Hannibal in the world. Doing a tour of the British Museum, this is what I'll be doing Wednesday night. All in the British Museum. I'll go through these quickly because I want to answer some of your questions if you have any. This is a carving that's been lifted from Egypt and put in the museum. You can see where these people dug it out of the temple, out of the tomb, and took it to the museum and put it on display. These are images in the British Museum. Here's one, for example, of crocodile devouring a Nubian. My brother doesn't look like it's a real big deal. I can do this. Here's an image of an African in ancient Italy, or an image of an African. This is a perfume bottle with the image of an African in ancient Italy, ancient Sicily, Italy. Here's one of a sorceress named Circe in Greek mythology, giving Ulysses a big cup of poison. All from Western Asia in the British Museum, Egypt. Here's another one. Now this one is not described as a black woman, but she sure looks like a sister to me. Am I wrong? Okay, let me just go through these quick. You've seen a lot. Here's an image from a tomb of a woman called a Kantaka from Meroe. The Kantakas, or the Queen Mothers, is where we get the name Candace from. This is from ancient Sudan. These are in the Cambridge Museum. Here's one I found in a museum in Florence, Italy, an African from ancient Egypt riding a horse, bareback. Let me see how many more of these. I think you all have about had enough of pictures, right?
Yeah.
Let me see how many more I have, because I wanted to save some time for questions. I know BJ had some questions. All right, I'll just go through them quickly, not that many more. Get your money's worth. From a museum in Italy called Bologna. Here you can see the king and the king's grandfather was also a king. Look at the type of crown, which is made to look like human hair. There's one in particular I want to show you this is from a museum in Florence, Italy. After I went to Ethiopia, I spent a week in Italy scouting out a tour for next year. I found a lot of images of women from ancient Egypt that I'd never seen before in books. There's a couple pieces I want to show you in particular that really, these are hair pieces. These are extensions. Just like today. So there are different ways we know that ancient Egypt was an African civilization. But these are our braids. These are our extensions. And what stood out to me, now here, this is in Rome, this is what we call a Black Madonna. I was in a church looking for a painting and I stumbled on this. This is the Arch of Septimius Severus. Septimius Severus was an African emperor of Rome, and this is the largest structure in the imperial form in Rome. This is a man named Caracalla, who was the son of an African emperor. This is an image of a deity painted black, a fertility figure from ancient Rome. I showed this figure before. I showed this one before. These are in the Vatican Museum. The Vatican has 13 museums. Now here's an interesting piece. I showed a variation of this. This is a black figure from ancient Greece. And you know this is right here? Hercules. Now why would Hercules be juxtaposed with a black person on the other side of the vase? We don't know. This is in the Vatican Museum. Here's in the Vatican Museum. This place was locked off or closed off. It was a big rope in front of it, and I just took the rope down and walked up there and took a picture. These are in Venice. These are Moorish bell ringers. Here's an image of a Moor and the back of the head of a Moor. These are in Venice. Here's the African Emperor Septimius Severus. You can see he looks very African here, African Emperor of Rome. Here's a banquet scene from the Italian Renaissance, and this sister seems to dominate the scene. I don't know who she is. My first thought was she was a servant, but I don't know who she is. She might be giving orders. She may be a guest coming late. One of the early inventions of CP time. Like I'm just, got off work, coming. More with the turban in Venice. This is in the hotel I stayed in. I'm almost done. What else we got? Morris bell ringers. I showed you that. This one I photographed in a museum in Paris not long ago. This is a museum of the Middle Ages in Paris, and this is a depiction of the Queen of Sheba. This is 800 years old. Here's one, again, I wasn't supposed to photograph, and I was told specifically when I walked in this museum, they saw me with my camera, and a young white girl came up to me and says, "No photography, sir." I said, "All right." First chance I got, I took this picture. And this is from ancient Bulgaria. Now here's something, here's a lesson. Never ask anybody when you go in a museum if you can take pictures. Just take pictures. And then usually what will happen, they'll say is no photography. But by then, if you've taken care of business, you got the picture you wanted. If you ask them if you can take pictures and they tell you no, then you're busted. You have no excuse. So just take the picture. And this is from ancient Bulgaria. It's a gold circle with small heads of black men. This is about 2,000 years old. Bulgaria. An elephant rider from ancient Asia. So Africans weren't the only people who rode elephants. A little image of a black man from ancient Greece. And let me find one or two more, we're going to call it a day. Now this is a Spanish emperor here with the nose missing. So this phenomenon of missing noses is not just confined to ancient Egypt. All right, I think one or two more, and then that's definitely it. I've said that about 5 times now. Caracalla, here's an interesting looking one from the ancient world. And this is Cleopatra again, and the back of her head. Look at the hair. In the Louvre. Come on, Runoko, let's finish it up. I'll end with this one. I have a few more, but I'll end with this one. And this is Osiris, the Lord of the Perfect Black. He's called Asar. And you can see he has the same type of crown that the Pope wears from time to time, and the crook and the flail. And this is from the Book of the Dead. Now, I may have gotten a little carried away with the photographs, but they're so important and they're so interesting, and this is kind of what I do, and I don't get to Boston very often, and so I wanted to share that with you. All right? So those are the 3 presentations I'll do tonight. All right? Thank you. I do hope you will come out Wednesday. You can change your mind. We'll be there. I would like to have 20 people on the tour. We want to meet at the main entrance to the museum at 6:30 Wednesday night, and I'll give an overview, and we'll start the tour promptly at 7. There's a lot of stuff in there. You're going to have a good time. All right? You want to say anything?
Yes, sir. So now we're going to do a little Q&A. So, brother, you want to sit back here, and then I'll...
Oh, that would be nice.
Yep, yeah. Sit back here. I'll move the projector card out of the way, so we get a clear shot. We'll do questions and answers. And then another thing I want to interject while I'm moving to do that is I was told by another great brother, Askia Torre. You familiar with Askia?
Of course.
Okay. So Askia told me the story that Hercules was based on an African hero, Memnon. Had you ever heard that?
Yeah, but I don't think that's true.
Oh, okay. All right. That was my question. That's why I ask questions and not make statements, right?
Yeah, you could just shut this down and say the bulb.
Absolutely.
The bulb's more expensive than the projector.
Don't I know it?
Preserve that.
Don't I know it?
And that also produces a lot of heat.
Yes, it does. Now, if I could just figure out. There we go. All right, so we're good with that. Pardon me, y'all, just for a moment.
Now let's see who has questions, and that'll determine how much time I'll spend answering questions. Who has a question or a comment? Scipio Africanus is a conqueror of Africa. Scipio Africanus, in which there were 2, engineered the defeat of the Carthaginians. Carthage was in Tunisia, and of course the Carthaginians, the most famous hero is Hannibal, and the Romans defeated the Carthaginians in 3 massive wars called the Punic Wars. And as a reward for that, he was called Conqueror of Africa. But some people have it wrong, and they go around saying that Africa is actually named after him when he's actually named after Africa. So that's easy to clear up. Now, why we keep repeating these things, I don't know. I guess if you are just programmed to think a certain way, it's difficult to break that training and that indoctrination down. So does that answer?
It does, thank you.
You're quite welcome. BJ?
First, let me say
And
that,
thank you for everything. This sister is helping organize the program on Wednesday night. Just all around good sister. Been a Facebook friend for a long time. Has a blog, internet radio program. All right.
first, I want to say we are honored to have
Honor's
your
mine.
scholarship with us here in Boston and hope that you come back more. My question is this. What are we doing as a people in the Pan-African community, in the activist community, throughout these Americas with a K? What are we doing to preserve and to timeline the history of the destruction of our history?
We're not doing enough. I think that, for a long time in this country, Africans were not even allowed to learn to read and write. So we kind of fell behind in terms of the preservation of our history, the writing of our history. Of course, we've always had African scholars like David Walker, who lived here, and Martin Delany and Edward Blyden in the 19th century, Rufus Lewis Perry, and in the 20th century, people like Drusilla Dungy Houston and William Leo Hansberry, a few, but not enough. And so I think it's time now for us to take the lead and the responsibility of writing our own history, doing it unapologetically, without stuttering, without stammering. So we're not doing enough, but I think the pace is being picked up. I think that we need to support the scholars just like we must support the activists. And then here's another thing. We need to learn to preserve the archives of the scholars. I mean, when a scholar or an activist dies and their libraries, their works are scattered to the far corners of the earth, that's really a crime, that's a sin. I can see that happening to me. Now, I have two sisters, a brother. My daughter so far hasn't expressed any interest in being a historian. I asked her, do you want to be like Daddy? No. And she has plans of her own. And my sisters and brother, they don't have a real clue as to what I do. I mean, they love me, I love them, but I can see them right now saying, well, those books are in the way, and we could put another flat screen TV or a pool table or something like that. So he's gone, he ain't gonna know. So let's take his books and put them in that shed over there, and then the rain is gonna come, blah, 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 blah. Because it happens to scholars all the time. And I tell them, and they don't believe me, that if that happens, I'm gonna come back and haunt you guys late at night, 2 or 3 in the morning. I ain't gonna let you sleep. But we have to do a better job in preserving the archives. Another thing, we need to find a way to get books to this army of African men and increasingly African women who are incarcerated. Look what happened to Malcolm. Although Malcolm's parents were Garveyites, Malcolm went astray, found himself in prison, came under the influence of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as people like Jay Rogers and Carter G. Woodson, and he was transformed. So every week I get letters from brothers in prison in some part of the world saying, can you send me a book? I grew up with Tookie Williams. Tookie Williams was executed. When he was on death row, he started writing me saying, Runoko, I've written a book on African history and African children, and only if I knew then what I know now. So we need to preserve the books, preserve the archives, and circulate the books. A lot of us are content now with YouTube and DVDs. But to me, there's something special about having a book in our hand, and all that goes hand in hand with your question. What's your second question? You have 2 parts.
My second question is, where are and are we training the African anthropologists and African historians of the future?
We're not doing a good job with that. Because black folk be saying, young people, how does that put money in my pocket? How does this black stuff benefit me? And we haven't been able to translate that into why I think effectively this information is important. I say it all the time, what you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself, what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself, and what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. That all strong people emphasize their history all the time and weak people don't, but our people are just so busy seemingly trying to survive from day to day, trying to pay their bills, relationship issues, health issues, etc., etc. And so the idea of reading, studying, training generations of people to do this work, for most of us, that's just very far removed from our reality. Even myself. Now, I have an honorary doctorate degree. I am Dr. Rashidi, but I couldn't get a job at Harvard University with that. And so my question would be, since I don't have access to a bunch of graduate students, how do I mentor younger people? How do I take this information and hand it down to new generations? And I don't have an easy answer for that. Now, this class that I'm going to teach on Facebook, or my new class, begins at the end of next month. And that's going to be what I focus on, is how we transmit this information to new generations. And how do I pass along what I've done? Just as I've learned from people like Dr. Ben and John Henry Clark and Ivan Van Sertin and Hazy Hilliard, now it's my turn to say, how do I mentor a new generation? How do I pass this along? And I don't have easy answers, so you all are going to have to help me with that. Who's the next question? Yes, sister.
Hi, I just want to say you've been very informative, and I like the proof that you brought with what you have taught me and what I've learned tonight. But I've been taping you. I tried to get some of my nephews to come here with me to hear you, because I've been reading a little bit about it.
You've been recording this presentation?
Yes, I have.
You're naughty, sister. Wow, how could you do a thing like
You
that?
told me to do it first.
I did?
Yes, you did.
I don't remember that
You told me
conversation.
what you did, so I emulated.
Well, you got it now, so not much to say. I don't remember that discussion.
But anyways, it's going to be how I get them to come to hear you, because my sister was their mother. She was murdered. They never had a father, and I'm not a man, and it's only so much that I could teach them. They don't believe in Christ. They don't believe in church. They don't believe in God and the different things, but I think they will believe in ancestry, of course. And you have been an excellent teacher tonight, and you are going to get my people, my nephews who I love, my sons, who I'm not their biological mother, to come here from this recording right here. And I know it's going to get them. And I just want to thank you for giving me a way for them to materialize into men of knowledge of who they are.
You got out of that real good. You know what I said? I think that what I try to do is be very visual.
Yes.
Asha Kwesi is like that. We show a lot of pictures, try to be animated, try to talk about what it means, not just give the dry bones, dates and facts and figures. I think a lot of our children want to feel like you care about them, and that you're not just talking at them, but you really want to share with them. So be visual, be patient. Minister Louis Farrakhan likes to say, we must love our people more than they hate themselves.
Yes.
And Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, used to say we must have undying love for our people. And all that says that we need each other, because we all get tired sometimes. White supremacy is very powerful. And you can't challenge it by yourself, because it'll just grind you down. And you can't defeat it overnight. So we must prepare ourselves for generations of struggle, and we must work together. We have to lean on each other. Okay. Any questions on this side? Let's go to this side. No questions? This side? Yes.
I had a question about the noses. There was some suggestion that there was something behind the noses missing from the statues. I had read that it was just from weathering, for the same reason that arms are missing. It's just protrusions that were transited with time, or whether they need to remove that. There's other explanations of that.
Well, there are a number of explanations. One is it's natural over time. But some of these statues are made of hard granite, stone, and basalt. And then you could say some of them were damaged because they may have fallen over, and that's plausible. But I think that a lot of that was done quite deliberately. So the question would be who, and when, and why. Now, if I post a picture, that happens every time, and it really annoys me if you're a Facebook friend of mine. If I post a picture on Facebook with a statue with a missing nose, inevitably, usually the first comment is, they knocked it off because we were too black. And so I say, well, who knocked it off? White people. Well, what white people? I don't know. The Greeks or the Romans. And I said, what is your evidence of that? I don't have any evidence, that's just the way they are. I think we've been so traumatized and so brutalized by white supremacy that it clouds our reasoning and our critical thinking, and we respond in an emotional manner. what I had come to believe, because two things. First, I couldn't see any documentation for invaders doing that. That's number one. And number two, I began to see a lot of that done on Roman statues that are purely Caucasian. And so I began to think it wasn't a racial thing. Now, about a month ago, I was fortunate enough to have lunch with the curator of the Egyptian and Nubian collections at Fitzwilliam Museum at Cambridge University. And she told me that the Arabs did it because they saw it as a form of idolatry. My response is, I really don't know, and that a lot more research needs to be done. But I think that most of those missing noses was not an accident. It didn't come from weathering. It was done deliberately. We just have to figure out why. I'll tell you something else in addition to that. One of the things is an African proverb, or maybe it's a Runoko proverb, I don't know. And that goes, the same thing, because I'm an African. And it goes, only fools know everything. And so I'm quick to say, I don't know. That I'm trying to figure it out. That maybe we can figure it out together. But never find yourself put in a corner or position, my sister, where you feel like you have to have an explanation for everything. We can discuss it, but I don't have a definitive answer for that. Next question. Yes.
So, you said something that struck me.
I like this sister. She stood up.
My back is kind of...
Oh, okay. I take half of that back, but you still stood up. Okay.
I'm a teacher, and you said something that struck me. You said a lot of things that struck me.
Good. I like the way you amended that.
Yes. You mentioned that we should pay more attention to where we came from than where we landed. And I'm noticing, I can't help it but notice the attention level that the young people in this room had for your presentation, my son included. And there's something to be said about the oral tradition, the pictures, and you didn't have any hands-on stuff, and I didn't notice a lot of up and down and children all over the place. Can you talk a little bit more about what you noticed in schools and the traditional ways that children are being taught in your travels to places in Africa?
I think, first of all, African history generally is not taught in Africa. I think a lot of us, how many of you have been to Africa? Okay, maybe about a quarter of the people here. I think that many so-called conscious African Americans have a romantic view of Africa. And we think those Africans got it going on in many ways, they're more advanced than we are. But the same person who enslaved us colonized them. And a lot of the educational systems in Africa are Eurocentric. And they still are from a colonial perspective. For example, if you're in a Francophone country, a country colonized by the French, you probably know more about Napoleon than you do about African leaders. I would even challenge people in this room today, especially before you came in. Who can give me the name of an African leader who lived before slavery? The average person can't answer that question. If you go on the street, if you think about it long enough, you might think of King Tut, or maybe Mansa Musa, but the average person can't tell you the name of a single African who lived before slavery. If you go to Ghana, they start teaching history from the time the Portuguese came, not the Asante kingdoms. Or if you go to South Africa, a country that has a history of occupation by black people for at least 40,000 years, perhaps a couple 100,000 years, they start teaching history in the universities from the time the Dutch came in 1652. Or Uganda, one of my favorite countries in Africa, from the time the English came in the early 19th century. And so Africa is not a panacea, it's not a utopian situation in terms of traditional African values and methods of teaching. Again, for me, what works is I'm passionate. I try to be funny from time to time. You know, I can be arrogant and conceited, but I can also poke fun at myself. I show a lot of pictures. I try to explain what the things mean. I try to come off like I love you. And this isn't about me just showing off, but about sharing something that's important for all of us. And a lot of children respond to that, and they respond to the visuals. I think that we are very visual people. And so those are techniques that I use that are usually pretty effective, and they work well in Africa and among Africans in other parts of the world. Yeah. Now, also, before we go any further, My email account got hacked now about a year ago. I had to switch over. And also, I have a couple websites in progress. If you ever want to reach me, just to contact me about my tours, about books, if a question comes up, you can easily reach me. I'm at runoko@hotmail.com. RUNOKO@hotmail.com. If you like, I'll give you my phone number, my cell phone number. You can go to my website, runokorashidi.com, and I'm easy to communicate with. Yes.
I was actually very surprised to hear that African history was already taught with that.
A lot of people are surprised.
I was curious, do you think the miseducation of Black history is worse out there or here?
I say it's even worse in Africa than it is here. Now, the United States is I won't say the most racist, but it's a very racist country. I don't have to convince anybody of that. South Carolina showed us that last week. But in this country, we have a relative degree of freedom of speech. We have freedom of assembly. We have time. I don't see anybody that looks like they're starving here. Nobody looks hungry. All of us have a laptop or a tablet or something. We all have TV. We have time to sit and think and discuss. And I think that that's something that most sisters and brothers on the continent don't have. In many parts of Africa, the electricity maybe every other day or a few hours a day. You don't have running water. So how do you catch up? I mean, for most people in Africa, just day-to-day life is a struggle. But we don't have that issue. What we lack is consciousness. And we lack the will. And we lack vision. And some of us just plain lack courage to do what needs to be done. So I would say the ball is in our court now. And the victory is in our hands. Now, whether we choose to do that or not, I don't know. We are dumbed down. And so for some of us, the highlight of our week is scandal and empire. And we say it's revolutionary because at least it's black people. So, I think that we just need to get our act together. And then some of us feel so fortunate to live in America. I've heard people say, thank God for slavery because at least it got us out of Africa. Or call me anything but an African. I ain't no African. I'll tell you another thing that we deal with. I'll tell you a quick story. I went to Ethiopia in 2004, the first time I went there. And I did a presentation for the history department at the University of Bahadar in Ethiopia. And the students, I thought I gave an excellent presentation. The students were just as bored as they could be. These are Ethiopian students, like, are you finished yet? So I did the presentation and I said, who has a question? And nobody's hand went up. I said, you mean to tell me I came all the way from the United States, gave this presentation, not getting a dime or a burr, and nobody has a question? Nobody's hand went up. I said, well, I ain't letting you go. So if you don't have any questions for me, I have questions for you. I said, when I give presentations to African Americans, I start by asking them, what do you think of when you think of Africa? And they always give me three answers consistently: wild animals, poverty, and disease. And every now and then a person might say, the origin of civilization, gold, beauty, something like that. But I always get those three. And you can see indignation cross over the faces of everybody in that room. So now everybody's animated. They're mad, as a matter of fact. So I said, now you tell me, when you think of African Americans, what do you think of? And they said, and then everybody's hand went up. 35 people, now everybody has a question or comment. When we think of African Americans, they told me, we think of people who were captured in Africa and enslaved and fought and won their freedom. And now we want to know why you turned your back on Africa. Oh, and then the room just lit up. Then I had 45 African Americans who were in my tour, all their hands went up. So now we're having a very dynamic discussion. And those African Americans responded and they said, number one, you guys think we're all rich. A lot of us, spend our life savings to come to Africa because it meant something to us. So we don't have the money that you think we have. That's number one. Number two, people say, well, even if we contributed something, how would you use that money to uplift Africa? And that's one reason we don't give more. But another person said, and the audience said, yeah, that's right. because your ancestors sold my ancestors into slavery. Now, Ethiopia ain't had nothing to do with the transatlantic slave trade, but that's a deep perception that many African Americans have, that we don't owe you in Africa a damn thing because your ancestors sold my ancestors. So that's a common thing that we need to destroy. That prevents global unity, I think. And also, the other point that I was going to mention is Africans, just like we are told Africans sold you, Africans on the continent don't mess with those African Americans. They're violent, they do drugs, they steal, they disrespect their women. And so Africans on the continent of Africa are told before they go, don't mess with those African Americans, they're up to no good. So I think that we need to sit and talk to each other and then have a much better understanding. Women have always told me in relationships, and believe me, I've been in more relationships than I care to think about. I've walked out of and been walked out on. I'm still looking for right now, in case anybody's interested. I thought I would mention it. Communication is the most important thing. Y'all ever heard that? That the most important thing is that we be able to talk to each other. Well, that's in any relationship. And Africans in the diaspora need to be able to talk to Africans on the continent and vice versa. We need to talk to each other. I don't know how many people from the continent are here now, but it's mostly an African American thing, and somehow we need to break that down. What's the next question? Yes.
First, I'd like to say thank you for remembering and giving such a great presentation.
Thank you.
The memory for me is going. So let me get to my question.
They said that's the second thing to go. I thought you would laugh at that.
Dealing with what you had made reference to about last week, 9 black people, 1 black man, and them being in church. Do you have an opinion on that? Serving a white Jesus and being black people, you ever thought?
I think that it's important, if we're going to worship an image in physical form, that that image should look like me and you. I would like to think that I see an image of God whenever I see a reflection in the mirror. And I need to strive to be God-like. We were taught that God looks anything other than what we look like. And that was a part of the enslavement process. And the introduction of Christianity by the Portuguese during the colonial period. And I think that idea is deeply implanted in our minds. I lived in San Antonio for a number of years, and there was a famous Negro preacher, and you ain't heard me say Negro until just now. And I'm using the word very deliberately, who would say, I'll be dead before I see an image of a black Christ in my church. And that's deeply ingrained in the psyche of a lot of our people. So we have to break that down, and it takes time. I ain't gonna lie to you, some people just need to die and take those ideas with them because they're beyond redemption. I know that's harsh, but we live in a harsh environment. Some people just are so ingrained with enslavement that they're just not going to change. And so we have to keep pushing and hope new generations will have a different concept. That's all I had over here. Yes?
A lot of the information that you have, I should say, all of the information is extremely valuable, and it's something that needs to be taught in schools and kind of passed on to some of the younger generation.
Yep.
Do you have any plans around maximizing your reach, being able to make this something that you can, I don't want to say package it differently, but you can get it to more people to where it's more readily available and understood?
Not really. Now that's your job.
That's right.
Now I hear that we have at least one sister who says she's an educator, and I'm sure there are others, but that's your job. Now I have the information. Now how do we disseminate it? You tell me. I told you, I don't know if I told you here, but I mentioned it somewhere. I don't even know how to send a text message on my phone. So you know I'm challenged by technology. But there are other people, that's their genius. They are advanced in technology. So how can we take what I have and merge it with what you got and add what you have so we have a very formidable package? So it's not all my responsibility, it's our responsibility. Okay. Yes, sister?
And that's come to the point I want to make. Do you have a foundation set up? So I want to let you know
An easy question.
Okay, that's one question. My daughter is a media professional, and she also is a computer professional as well. She does websites and all that stuff. And I definitely would like to introduce
Well, let's
her
hook
to you
up.
at one time. You know, sometime.
There's that old expression, it takes a village,
Yeah.
not just to raise a child,
To help.
but for everything. It takes a collective effort.
Yeah.
And what happens a lot of times is you try to do everything and you find yourself burnt out.
Right.
And then you're no good to anybody, including yourself. But collectively, we can do anything. But it takes just that. We have to be willing to put up with each other, to work with each other for the long haul. That's one of the things you learn in this. I've been in the movement, I'm 60 now, since I was 18. And you learn many things. You learn you can't defeat the system by yourself. You learn that it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. It takes a collective effort. That sometimes you can step back and take a deep breath and regroup, and then you start again. So, again, Runoko@hotmail.com.
Okay. Another question, Dr. Runoko.
All right.
I have noticed the wave of Africans going to Europe, trying to
Yeah.
get to Europe, and
Dying to leave
yeah,
Africa.
dying. You know, so is it a phenomenon happening that because of the wars that's going on there, or it is something that's a political movement between the enemies that creating some sort of
Of course.
situation to have
course.
that kind of things happening? Because
Let me address both your questions. First of all, and this, I don't know how you're going to respond to this. I would love to get married again. I need a mate, a partner, somebody that can help me do these things. You know, I think that we all need balance, and I need that, okay? But sometimes I need to be able to slow down in order to do that. I told you I haven't unpacked a suitcase since 1997. It's hard to be in this, a sustained relationship when you're in a situation like that. So I want to say that would help me. And I don't mind saying that. I'm not a shy person, a ashamed person. I don't think I'm doing anything in my life that I need to be ashamed of. And I tell you what my needs are. I want somebody to help me. Okay? You know, if I met a sister who was a computer wizard, I'd be on one knee right now. Okay? And that would help. In terms of the situation about Africans dying to leave Africa, Africa is impoverished. You have most of the leaders of Africa that are either incompetent or corrupt. And so then you have the idea that Europe and the United States is the promised land. It's the land of milk and honey. That's what the image is projected through the media. So you have all of that. But you also have internal strife that's introduced in Africa by outside powers, because when people are fighting with one another, it's easier to exploit them and take advantage of them. And so it's no accident that these issues crop up in one country after the other. The French are notorious for interfering in African politics. And the United States, has a dirty record too. So does England and all these imperial countries. So what's happening in Africa is not by accident, it's by design. Now, that means Africans in the diaspora need to get more involved. But if we're told we ain't no African, and those Africans don't want you, they don't like you, they don't want to have anything to do with you, they sold you, chances are you're not going to intervene. But just like, and sometimes people say this is a bad example, just like Jews, you can't say anything about Israel. I don't care what the Israelis do to the Palestinians. Any politician that dares challenge that is in political danger. Anybody who says anything about it publicly is going to be beaten down. But you can say anything about Africa, and hardly nobody's going to mumble. So I'm saying that just like Jewish people in New York and in London and Boston come to the support of Israel, Africans must come to the support. African Americans, Africans in diaspora have to come to the same place. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Last question. A half a question here and a half a question there, real quick.
Because mine was a two-part question, so it's going to be one.
One part.
What do we need to do for our young people? I think we need more black teachers, but
think we have so many issues that we have right here, internal issues, that if we go back to Africa, we just take a lot of those same internal issues to the motherland. I think that we have a battle, a war that's on many fronts. And that we have resources here that we're not taking advantage of, we're not utilizing. What do we do for our young people? For one thing, you can invite me into the schools and people like me. But secondly, be a good role model, be an example. I think our children watch what you do even more than listen to what you say. And so get you a black woman. Spend money with other black people. Join an organization, join an organization of like-minded people. Take down that image of white Jesus on your wall. Let your children see you read a book. I'm saying all of those things, be a role model, is a big help. Last half question. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, in the 90s, there was like more surge of black consciousness on college campuses. Like, do you think that surge of black consciousness on college campuses?
No, I don't see much consciousness at all. You remember now, our enemies keep aware of what we're doing too. Our enemies don't sleep. White supremacy doesn't take a day off. And so they changed the game. And we have to change too. I don't think the system will push you any further. In other words, I think the system pushes you almost to the wall, but not to the wall. They give you a little space. And so I think that we need to change our tactics too. When I was coming up, I was a university student. I wanted to change the world. Children I meet now want a good job. They want material things. And so I think that we have to change our tactics, and the media has a lot of responsibility for that. Sisters and brothers, Runoko@hotmail.com. You can reach me anytime. Go to my website, RunokoRashidi.com. You can send me a Facebook message. The session Wednesday night, we meet at 6:30. The tour starts at 7 in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. God bless you. Thank you for coming out.
We need to leave out of here peacefully and orderly. If you could please, if you got a water bottle or any other type of trash around you, make sure you take that with you on the way out. And we'll begin clearing out.
And again, the books and DVDs are still available.
Absolutely. As are donations.
Okay. And then we had a but I have a whole I was one of the founders.
That's bothering me because I sat there and
Yeah.